So, we are in the 8th and final Perek. We're starting now. The 8th Perek of Shemona Perakim. And the 8th Perek really deals with a very, very big, one of probably the biggest, most important questions that there is, important problems and challenges to. I would argue, though, that it's more of a philosophical problem than a Yiddishkeit problem, but I don't think the Rambam doesn't look at it like that, and definitely not. Most. Okay, and there's the big question of free will. Now, why is free will such an important question? Now, our main concern really isn't, commonly when people, when we discuss the question of free will, it's free will, obviously, the problem of free will is usually posed in contradiction to Hashem's knowledge of what, the outcome of our choice will be. That is not really the conversation in this parak. It's much the specific determinism that this parak discusses is slightly different. We get to that also, but that's not really where we're at. The place where we're at is now we completed 7 perakim in which the Rambam sort of gives you a handbook of how to approach life. If you want to, if you want to go on the scale of refining your character and developing your mind and coming to a place of complete connection to Hashem, and to the point where the Rambam really gives everyone the responsibility that he should strive to have every single action in his day and every single action in his entire life be geared towards one single goal. And the Rambam tells you that if you follow my path and if you follow the Torah's path, conscious and aware of where you want to get, then you can mamish be in the levels of the Nevi'im. Now, having that said, that gives a person a tremendous responsibility on the one hand. On the other hand, it gives everyone the highest destiny possible. Someone could tell the Rambam and argue that no, that I was born in a way. So you tell me that if I'm conscious of my actions and I evaluate every single thing I do, then I could shape my character be a certain way. No, I am predestined for whatever reason it is. We'll deal with different reasons why people think that they how determinism influences their actions. But people could say that I can't. I have to. My personality is shaped in a way because maybe I was born under a certain constellation, and astrologically, I am determined. I was coded, right? My code was written that I'm an angry person, and therefore I can never really be a mild-tempered person because I was born, and my DNA has anger written in it, and therefore I must be angry, and there's nothing I can do to get out of it. And basically, a person could say that either naturally, right? This is a natural argument. This is not a religious argument. This is a natural argument. Naturally, I was born under a certain constellation. I was born in a certain astrological system, and therefore I am predetermined that I have a certain disposition that I will, by hook or by crook, that I have to live with. That is one argument against saying that you could take control of yourself. Because this is someone that's arguing with the Rambam. The Rambam says that I could take control of myself, and if I just do X, Y, Z, then I will be a completely perfectly balanced person. And more than that, and even if you are angry, this is the argument. Even if you're angry, we don't agree now that you have a disposition that your personality traits are angry, greedy, lost, and whatever. We're not arguing that. That's an obvious fact. The question now is, could you do something about it or not? Now the Rambam says, and that's the argument of the entire Shemona Prakim, and according to the Rambam, that's the argument and the function and the primary goal of the entire Torah, most of the Taryag mitzvahs, the entire Pirkei Avos for sure, and Hilchos Deis and the Rambam and Shemona Prakim, and that is that no, every single person could take control of his own life, and he could, if he's conscious and if he's aware and if he's goal-oriented, then he could refine every single part of his character, and he could develop his mind, and he could attain Yidiyas Hashem. And he could have a mitzvah of Avos Hashem. The mitzvah of Avos Hashem was given to every single Yid. And the mitzvah of Avos Hashem could only be acquired if a person pursues it, and it's an intense pursuit, because it takes every part of your being and every part of your rational mind and intellectual mind, and it takes a lot of working on your character to be able to get to Avos Hashem and Yidiyas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and all that. But the Rambam says that this is a mitzvah that every Yid, it's attainable for every person. And not only it's attainable, it's an incumbent upon every single Yid, and that's really why he was created. That is that you should not be angry, you should not be jealous, you should not be greedy, and we have a demand to you specifically that you shouldn't, and you could, and the Torah demands it from you that you should not be angry. Now, comes a person, he says, I have to be angry for two reasons. Now, these are two different people making two different arguments. One person is making an argument that I must be angry because my DNA code, because of the time of the stars and astrology, which is something that chances are that you today are not so concerned about, but in the olden days this was very, very relevant. This is the dominating science at the time, and most Chachmei Yisrael agree with this, and they would tell you that no, there is a certain determinism, that you can't choose your character traits. You were born with certain character traits, and you will die with these character traits. That's key. You will die with them. There's no way it's in a person's DNA. Just you can't. There's certain things you can't change about yourself. Now, maybe you could suppress it. Maybe you could redirect it. You could channel it. All that, but you will never be. You can never be a mild-tempered person. That you can't be. So that's one argument against it. And therefore, there's no point in me working on myself to have all my emotions balanced, right? Because according to the Rambam, the goal isn't that your actions should be balanced, because the actions are just expressions of the soul. The main point, according to the Rambam, is that your personality should be balanced. And you should be in that, Goldilocks zone. And that's really the point of the entire Pirkei Avos and Shemona Prakim. And that is primarily, like we saw in the fourth parak, that is to get your personality in a perfect independent state from both extremes. Now, so that's one. The other argument is that I was born with a certain destiny, and maybe this is really more where that Hashem really controls, being that Hashem controls the entire world, and there's no way that Hashem could change. And if Hashem's knowledge is that I'm going to do X, Y, Z, then I can't, I can't manipulate it. So there's a religious argument to make, and that's something that everything in the world is predetermined, and every action you do, basically, Bechira is just a figment of our imagination. Really, we don't have any free will, and so these are really the two things. And again, obviously, making such an argument would relinquish all responsibility from a person, because if you're not in control of your actions, then there really is no reason to work on yourself, because it's a game, it's a simulation, it's the Matrix, and there's no reason to think that you're doing something when there's really no real work, self development in if everything's predetermined. So let's see how the Rambam tackles this question. This is a very long parak, because the Rambam is going to deal with this in a natural level, in a philosophical level, in a Yiddishkeit level. This is a multi. This is not only on one front. This is almost the culmination of every single part of Shemona Prakim, like the Rambam's sources and the Rambam's. Sometimes the Rambam deals with the Yiddishkeit issue. Sometimes he deals with the philosophical issue. Here, I think he attacks it on every front. So let's see. The Rambam says, Lo yitochen. It's not possible. She'iyah adam mitchiles briyasoi b'tivoi bal ma'ala v'lebal chesaron. A person cannot be. It's impossible to make the argument that a person should be naturally, from inception, a person should be virtuous or bad, or meaning that he should have a ma'ala or a chesaron, right? A virtue or a vice. Just like you can't say that a person was born, a plumber. You can't say that a person was born with a certain knowledge or with a certain. No person is born a musician or a plumber. Now, you could say that a person is born with a certain tendency. And that tendency is what's going to make him better at being a plumber or a musician or whatever it is. Certain people are born with perfect pitch, and certain people are born tone deaf, right? So there is a possibility that people, in a professional sense, a person is born with certain a certain natural makeup. Every person has a different natural makeup. And in the world of that the Rambam has, that there are certain biles that control everything. There's a marashchare, mariroike, there are different biles that that's sort of what you would assume today would be hormones and different certain different types of genetic makeups that they would put a person in a position that he would probably have a tendency, that he could have a tendency to one thing or another. That's not a problem to say according to the Rambam. So yeah, a person is born with certain tendencies that maybe would make him more angry, and that would make him more upset, and that would make him more greedy, and whatever it is. These type of things, no problem. But to say that this person must be a certain way, or this person is born a jealous person, he's not born a jealous person. He's born with a certain makeup, that this makeup would make him more vulnerable for greed and for anger. That could be. That's acceptable. So again, it is acceptable to say that a person who's born with a certain makeup that would make him vulnerable to certain dispositions, to certain let's say even mindless or concerns, right? So a person could be born with a quieter nature, and a person can be more loud. Now, the person that's quieter is going to have easier time, let's say, with tznius. And tznius is not a bad word; it has nothing to do with women, right? Tznius is just a gewaldige midde that a person doesn't have to be all over the place. It's just so someone that's quieter by nature, maybe sometimes has an easier time with tznius, and sometimes he's quieter, so maybe he'll have an easier time with kas. But maybe for the same reason, he'll have a bigger issue with kinna. Or something like that, because certain times these, every type of makeup has the milas and chesronos that come with that, with having that level of everything has to do sort of, if you look at the DNA or you look at the bile system, and you see everything as just a mixture of ingredients, right? So if you have a little more of that, then you have these milas and these chesronos. That could be, but these are tendencies. That means that you are naturally born with a certain tendency to be more jealous. Okay, that could be. But that doesn't force you to do anything. There's nothing in you that's forcing you. You have a tendency, okay, you'll work on it. So this person has to work on not getting angry, and this person has to work on not getting jealous. Fine. But is there anything manipulating you currently that you should do one way or the other? Nothing. And that's the argument the Rambam is making. So he says like this: just like it's impossible that a person should be born and naturally he's a plumber, for instance, right? He should be a Bal Malacha from any physical Malacha, but it's possible that he's born with a certain gift or a certain vice that would make these things easier for someone, for you than for someone else. So if someone is born with a very good musical ear, that would give him a head start if he would want to go into the musical field. No, he's not born a musician. He's born with a certain natural gift, and that would give him a head start. And the other person is given, a setback. So certain people, when it comes to music, let's say, are on the 50-yard line. Some people are 25 this way, 25 that way. That's acceptable. But again, all that does is that gives a person a certain head start or a certain backup, but it doesn't manipulate this person naturally. You can't say that he's born a musician. There's no person born a musician. In the same way, you can't say that a person. So it says the Rambam, Ketzad. Someone who his composition, his physical composition, is inclined more toward dryness. Okay, this is in the old medical system. So that is going to make that his brain matter is pure and not a lot of moisture, and that's going to make it easier for him to remember things, and he's going to be able to understand better. So basically, this is a person that has a better brain physically. The hardware of his brain is better than the other person. Okay, so there is such a thing. Probably today, probably then, different medical terminology and medical causation of why such a thing would happen. But okay, again, let's say we could all agree to the idea that certain people have better hardware. Okay, someone has a better hardware for his brain, someone has better hardware for his body. Fine, it's a hardware issue. Now, that would give him a certain head start, no question about it. But does that make him born a smart person? No. Wisdom is something that you need to acquire. Wisdom is not something that if this person that has the good hardware, he's not going to develop his mind. He's not going to read a lot of books. He's not going to go to a lot of classes. He won't talk to a lot of people. These are the ways that naturally people attain wisdom, right? Wisdom isn't good hardware. Wisdom isn't that a person could chop something fast. So you have someone that chops something fast. If you have Reb Kiva there was probably in the generation of Reb Kiva someone with equally, a frum yid with equally mental capacity as Reb Kiva. I don't doubt it. There was another guy like that. He was a shoemaker. And he never went anywhere, and maybe he was lazy, and maybe he was drunk, and he just didn't get anywhere in life. Does that? So the hardware doesn't do anything. The hardware is it's not meaningless, because knowing that you have certain hardware could be something that you would know that you have a certain head start, or that you're backed up, and that would regardless, by the way, that would be mechayev you that you should act in a certain way, right? So the fact that someone has a person knows that he has a certain hardware, he has a good brain, that doesn't make him wise. Wisdom is acquired through intense learning, through discussions with people, through reading svarim and books, and learning from elders, and constant critique, and all that. So it's a lifetime of work that has nothing to do with what you're born. Now, someone is born with a head start, and someone is born backed up. But even the person, let's talk about the person that's backed up. So a person that's born with a little of his hardware is shvachem. So does that mean that he can't acquire wisdom? Sure, it could. It's going to be harder for him, but he could do it, and that's the point. The point is that no one could say that I'm not capable. You're capable, and what you need to do is you'll have to work harder than the other person. But and the truth is, when you'll work hard and the other person could work a little easier, it could be then he'll get ahead of you. We're not talking about if every person can get to the same place. I don't know if the Rambam is going to make that argument. We have to see. Lav davka every person can get to the same place. But every person could come to a place where he could refine his character, develop his mind, and reach Yediyas Hashem. And he can reach Nevuah, really. Now, ultimately, Nevuah is obviously Hashem's decision. You might not be able to, for the past 2,500 years, no one reached Nevuah. But that's not, again, as we saw yesterday, that has something to do with the general situation of the collective and not you as an individual. But you as an individual have the responsibility, and you don't have the excuse to say that I was born with hardware that make me handicapped to the point that I can develop myself and work on myself and in whether in behavior or mentally. So let's see. So he says. So here he talks in his language about the certain hardware that a person would have that would make him easier to understand and easier to acquire wisdom, and fine. But this person, right? But this person that we just said that he has this maila, that he has this head start because of the way he is wired and the way of his biles and all that. If he's not going to learn anything, and he won't awaken in himself, he won't awaken in himself any of his own koyach, right? He won't develop this koyach. Then he's going to say he's going to be a fool, right? He's going to die a fool, even though he has the hardware of Einstein or Reb Kiva, right? If you don't develop it, if you don't learn, if you don't do intense workout with your very advanced hardware, you're going to die a fool like the guy next door. It's not going to get you anywhere. And on the other hand, even this person who has this, who didn't start with that alternatively, right? This other person that's backed up, if he's going to learn and he's going to try to understand, even though that he has maybe a harder time, ultimately he will understand, and he's going to learn and he's going to know. It's going to require harder work, but he could get there. And the same way is with midas, right? If you have someone that because of his general makeup, right? So he's warmer, and therefore he's more likely to be courageous. So he is predisposed, right, to courage. It's easier for him to be a courageous person, and it's easier for him to take that upon himself. Right? So you meet such people. You can see it by little kids. You see little kids that they have it within them. Certain kids have this roshim, and this is not something that they develop. This is something that has to do with their genetic. We would call much more. The Rambam has a different. The Rambam is really identifying more the symptoms and an old language of medicine. That's why it has to do with warmth and dryness and all that. But what we would say today is genetically, certain people have certain characteristics, and that is something that he didn't work on and he didn't develop. Yet, if he won't channel this in the right way, if a person won't take this, the fact that he has a certain predisposition for being courageous, then he won't be. And when he'll grow older, then the guy next door that naturally is more, fearful and more meek than this person, but he worked on himself constantly, this person is going to come out much more of a courageous person than the person that was a predisposition for this. Okay. Why says the Rambam? Why do I have to say this? Says the Rambam, the reason why I have to tell this to you is that you shouldn't fall, right? That you shouldn't think that the delusions that the people that are into astrology, that you shouldn't think that that there's any truth in it, because they say that the time when a person is born, they determine that the time of when a person is born, that determines if he is if he is virtuous or he has this vice. And not only that, it says that a person stays in whole life. The idea of astrology implies that a person his whole life is going to stay in that bracket. That a person is going to be compelled to do certain actions because he's predetermined to do it. But you should know that Shadovas Muskim Mitorasenu that the consensus in the Torah and according to the philosophers, the Greek philosophers, and they not only, this is a claim that the Chachmei Yisrael make and that the philosophers make, but this is something that you can prove. The Rambam says, I could prove this to you conclusively. Shamsiyah Tanas Emes. It was been verified by true arguments that the actions of a person are in his own control. Every single person, you control your actions. There's nothing manipulating you from within. Zero. This is very important. Nothing from within you or from without of you manipulates you to do anything in the world. And this is what the Rambam is going to try to hammer away for the entire eighth Perek. Nothing. You alone, not Hashem, not nature, not your own DNA. Nothing is manipulating for you to do anything. And therefore, you are fully responsible for everything you do. You can't blame anyone or anything. Not religiously, not naturally, nothing. And therefore, if you did something, you have to own up to it. You have to own up to every single action you did in your life. For the better and for the worse. So, therefore, if you turn out to be a very virtuous person and you are very kind, then you have yourself to take the credit for. If you are jealous and greedy and you have an issue and you're fearful and you're meek and you have no self-esteem, no one to blame. No one. Not Hashem, not nature, nothing. You have the control. Only you. Fine. And the astrologers, bunch of nonsense. Absolute absurdity, absolute bonkers, pathetic thought. Don't even think about it. It was proven from the philosophers, the Torah, and the Rambam says you could, if through your own senses, you could understand argumentatively. I could prove to you logically that there's nothing in this whole science of astrology. All of a person's actions are in his power to control. Nothing is forcing him, nothing is manipulating him, nothing is compelling him. There's nothing from without of him, right? Like astrology, which is something that's outside of the control of a person. There is nothing that's manipulating. Gunish, there's nothing there. But the Rambam is saying, I'm not saying that a person doesn't have a tendency to, let's say that a person has more of a tendency to get angry or jealous or greedy than another person. That I agree with you. People are born because of their genetic makeup and the way that their biles work and whatever. People are born with certain tendencies. And that's something you can work on. And nothing is stopping you from working on it. True. So every single person you meet in the street has a different balance. And every single person has a certain nature, and by definition, every single person is going to have something that he's going to have to work harder than someone else. So, no one is born perfect because everyone has a different mix and a different makeup. And everyone is going to have to work on something. But no one is determined. No one is compelled or forced or manipulated in any way to act in any way. Gunished. So he says it's acceptable to say that someone, because of his natural composition, should be predisposed to certain tendencies. That's okay. And that's why it's going to be easier for him or harder for him. Fine. What's a challenge for him is easier for him and vice versa. That's acceptable. But that he should be compelled or prevented to do something that's absolutely not acceptable. And now the Rambam is going to go through a whole bunch of different arguments and certain kashas, sources in the Torah and Chazal, where you see maybe otherwise, and philosophically. Fine, these are arguments that we'll deal with later. But first, this is the opening and the most important point. And what that does is that takes away every excuse you can have. And that's really what the Rambam is trying to say. Because excuses where people run away when they don't want to take charge, or when they don't want to take responsibility. And what the Rambam is saying is that the Torah, that Hashem, and he's going to elaborate on this and he's going to prove this, that Hashem gave you your own life to control. And he gave you the free will and the choice, and you're holding the keys. You're sitting by the steering wheel, and you say, no, I was born in a certain circumstance, and that's why I'm a certain type of person. Never happened. It's your own silly excuses that you're using. Now, again, we have to say that there's a Ramban in length, many Chachmi Yisrael, Chazal, you can say, categorically disagree with this Rambam. Mamish. Like there's a chum in the Ramban Siman Reish Pei Gimel. We started giving a shir in the sugya. I never gave part 2 yet. But astrology is a very, very important difficult sugya. But now we're learning Rambam, so we're going to go with the Rambam. And the Rambam here says that a person, even though he might be born with certain tendencies to be for certain milas and chesronis, right? So certain milas and chesronis, but no one is born a good bal midas. There's no such thing. Midas are acquired. Midas is something you work with, you work on. Meaning, it's not really true because the Rambam really said that every single person is born a perfect bal midas. Okay, let me just clarify. Because throughout Shemona Prakim, the Rambam has been making the argument that every person is born on the 50-yard line. And that the Rambam, 50-yard line means, it works perfectly with the Rambam says here. 50-yard line means that every person is born with absolute nothing forcing him in either way. No one is born into a disadvantage or an advantage. The advantage and disadvantages are the tool. People were given different tools. It's not in the person itself. The person itself, every person is a clean slate. Every person is in control of where to take, his own self. Now, certain people were born. Everyone has different challenges, but that's all they are. They're challenges, and for someone, it's harder to chap a shtickle gemara, but it's easier for him to be courageous, and it's easier for him to be not jealous. And then the other person, vice versa. So the other person is born with a better head, and so everyone has his areas that he may be inclined naturally to do, but no one is forcing him. Not the stars, not Hashem, nothing. And that's something that we'll explore in Hashem. But the idea over here is the tremendous responsibility on the one hand, and obviously the advantage on the other hand. The fact that you know that you could change. You're not in jail. You're not in jail in your own self. You could take yourself out of whichever situation it is, and you could acquire nevuah. And that really is the goal. And that's why the Rambam is looking at every single year, and it says that Shemona Prakim is for every single person. No matter what your background is, no matter what you're born into, no matter what your situation is, you're in control. And if you know that you're in control, and you gear every action and everything to be in the middle path and to develop yourself and to go up the ladder, then you'll acquire the highest madrigas. If only you know and believe in yourself.